I'm not very good at this kind of thing. Let me explain what I mean by that. I don't come from a Republican family. I have never been active in any nationalist or Republican party or group. I'm not an expert on Irish history or on the history of the Irish struggle for independence. I'm just an ordinary citizen, an ordinary Irish citizen. But I still think it's important to commemorate 1916 because the men and women of 1916 were, to a great extent, ordinary people too. They were drawn from very different sections of society. There were literary men like Pearse and Plunkett. There were hardened military men like Thomas Clarke. There was even a landed aristocrat from the west of Ireland, Countess Markovich. But they were held together by a common cause, that cause being the liberation of Ireland from the rule of a foreign power. The belief that Ireland was best ruled by the Irish people themselves and not by a foreign government. That was what held them together. That was what made them do what they did. That was what made them make the sacrifice that they made. We know how that took place. That on Easter Monday, 1916, a small group of less than 200 people took over the GPO. That other points in the city, Jacob's Biscuit Factory, Boland's Mill, St. Stephen's Green, Beggar's Bush Barracks were also seized. The proclamation which Mr. Corba has just read out now was read then too to an almost equally small number of onlookers from the steps of the GPO by Patrick Pearse. We know what went wrong with the rising. We know that Owen MacNeill issued the countermanding order on Sunday, cancelling all volunteer activities from Monday, thus ensuring that the rest of the country would not rise. We know that the ship, the Aude, carrying weapons from Germany, did not reach its destination, but that they were detained by the British Navy, and so those arms never came to land. We know too that the British, as we say, did not play ball. They didn't attack the GPO as the rebels had expected that they would, hand to hand with infantry. They retreated to a safe distance and shelled the GPO and the surrounding buildings, not giving the rebels a chance to fight hand to hand. And of course we know that a great deal of O'Connell Street was destroyed before the final surrender took place on Saturday. And we know too that while surrender was necessary, the great majority of the rebels wanted to fight on. That in the College of Surgeons and Beggar's Bush Barracks there were loud groans of dismay when the word came through that a general surrender had been ordered. I can remember being told of the rising as a child, being taken by my grandparents to the Pearse Museum to St. Enda's and Rathfarnham. I remember being taken to Kilmainham Jail, my only memory of it being a grey building with iron doors and being told that someone had been shot there. I was in 5th class of primary school when I heard about the 1916 rising, and it was a wonderful and inspiring story. My teachers at primary school it was a Christian Brothers primary school. They were very ordinary Irish, patriotic Irish Catholics who were proud of the heritage of 1916. And I thought then at that age that pride in the heritage of 1916 was normal. It was a usual thing. But later, when I went on to secondary school, when I began reading newspapers, I realized that was not the case. That a great many Irish people were actually quite indifferent to nationalism, were quite indifferent to the struggle to gain independence for the whole of our island, that many Irish people looked on nationalists and patriots with disdain, just as people had sneered and spat at the rebels in 1916 as they were arrested. That was a bit of a shock to me. My secondary school was a cosmopolitan place that didn't emphasize its Irishness much. And as I grew older, I too became indifferent to nationalism. I was always a conservative, but I didn't think nationalism particularly important. I didn't think freeing the 6 counties particularly important. I knew that Sinn Féin were a left-wing party, that they sat with the communists in the European Parliament, that they had very liberal views on abortion and divorce and homosexuality. This put me off them, and this made me indifferent to Irish nationalism. My newspaper of choice was the Daily Telegraph while I was in college. The writers I most enjoyed reading were British Tories like Roger Scruton and Peter Hitchens. Ireland was not particularly high on my list of priorities. What changed that was the Nice referendum. While I was working and campaigning and canvassing, agitating for a no vote in that referendum, I had to ask myself, why? Why do we want a no vote? Why do we not want to give more sovereignty to Brussels? And I realized that the reason for that was quite simply because Ireland is best ruled by the Irish people themselves. That a people, that a government which are of the people can rule the country far better than an alien government can, whether that alien government be in London or in Brussels. Ireland is best ruled by the Irish. That is plain common sense. That is nationalism. That is practical nationalism. I am a nationalist. I have nothing against England or Britain any more than I have anything against Europe or other European countries. My nationalism is not based on a hatred of any people or any country. It is simply based on the common sense belief that the best rulers of Ireland are the Irish people. That is why I am a nationalist. It has nothing to do with hatred or bigotry or any kind of irrational emotion. It's plain common sense. It seems 1916 can seem irrelevant. It happened almost 100 years ago. It can seem not really a part of the country that we live in today. The parties that we have now do not really abide by the ideals of the proclamation that we have just heard read out. Fianna Fáil, the descendants of the Republicans in the Irish Civil War, are now a Europhile party who are desperately eager to give more of our national sovereignty to Brussels. Sinn Féin have, for all of their valiant defence of Irish national sovereignty, both at national and European level, do not at all abide by the Catholic and Christian principles that motivated the men and women of 1916. But the Rising definitely has many things to teach us. There are things that the ideals espoused by the proclamation should still be espoused today. They matter still today. Irish sovereignty matters. Since we joined the European Union in 1973, there has been a constant flux of sovereignty in Europe, and it has all gone one way, from the countries to the centralized European institutions. The main parties in this country see nothing wrong with that. They want to continue it. We have a major struggle ahead, which is the rerun of the Lisbon referendum. The Liberal group in the European Parliament have announced that they will use any means necessary to ensure a yes vote this time around. Our politicians are going to do the same. It will be a very bitterly fought battle to gain a no vote, but it can happen a second time, and it must happen. and it will be an inspiration to other peoples in Europe who do not have that choice, who do not have the opportunity to make their views known by referendum.